और अपनी मैम का भी हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ कि आपने अथक परिश्रम करके एक हमको पूरे देश की यात्रा करा दी है, पूरे देश के प्राचीन मंदिरों के दिग्दर्शन करा दिए हैं। अभी हमको 19वीं 20वीं शताब्दी के मंदिरों का जो वैशिष्ट है उस पर आज प्रकाश डालेंगे और बीच में कुछ जो क्वेश्चन महत्वपूर्ण हैं उनकी भी चर्चा करेंगे और एक प्रकार से संपूर्ति के रूप में इस सत्र का अवसान करेंगे। तो इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ में मैम से निवेदन करता हूँ कि
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And welcome everybody for our very last lecture in the series. Yeah. So we are going to start today with Nayak temples. I'm going to start from where we left. We'll finish some temples that we were not able to cover on Wednesday. Okay. So it was the collapse of Vijayanagar Empire at the Battle of Talikot that everybody knows that this is the time when the Nayaks or the viceroys or the governors took over the charge, of the entire kingdom. It was broken into many different smaller kingdoms. In fact, the Nayakas, they ruled from 4 branches actually. All right. And there were 4 branches of Nayakas at different places, Madurai, Tanjavur, Ginji, and Ekeri. It was actually Tirumalai Nayak who was the, most popular king of this particular dynasty. His time period is almost second quarter of 17th century to the third quarter of the 17th century. Okay. So many of the most important structures and the religious, in fact, edifices that I'm talking about and artworks, they all belong to the reign of Tirumalai Nayak, in fact. A number of, his portraits also, they come down to us. In fact, his capital was also Madurai, and that's where he made, many temples, including the Meenakshi temple that you are looking at on the screen. And most of these temples today are still they are living temples. They are active. They are in active worship also. Okay. So the Madurai Meenakshi temple, then we have the Ranganath Swami temple at Sri Rangam. All right. Then by this time, the gateways or the gopuras, they became very, very popular, and, the dimensions were, soaring to the sky, and they were very important with granite base. Now here also you can see the base is, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't started the slideshow. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So here also, if you look carefully, the base is that of granite, and it is the superstructure which is made up of brick and mortar. And then you have the stucco sculptures on top of this with a barrel vaulted or the Vallabhi roof that we call, and with these multiple colors on top. Okay, this became the general norm. All right. Then, these gopuras were almost like, tapering like this. They will go up like with a sala roof on top or a shala roof. Then other contributions of the Nayakas were the addition of Subramania's shrine that I showed you inside the Brihadishwara temple, which was almost the replica of Brihadishwara, but much smaller in scale. And then we have addition of paintings at the Chidambaram temple. And then we have additional walkways and the gopura at the Rameshwar temple. So all these temples that I'm talking about, they are all from Tamil Nadu. Okay. So first we are going to look at the Madurai temple, the Meenakshi temple. Now, by looking at this aerial view, you can see how grand and, the kind of enormity that comes down to us from, this particular picture. Okay. So inside the compound, we have 2 temples. One is that of Sundara, Shiva, an aspect of Shiva, and Meenakshi inside this walled courtyard that you see. A huge golden lily tank you have here. This is the lily tank that I'm talking about. So in fact, there are total 11 gopuras here, and of which 4 outer are the largest and about almost, 45 to 50 meters in height. And they are aligned with the Sundara shrine, the Shiva shrine, which was originally the shrine. So normally you will find it is later that, the newer kings come and they want to add something to the temple. They will create another boundary wall or the prakara wall and then install these, huge gopuras. Okay. So there are these uh, corridors, pillared halls, and the main shrine. They are all heavily ornamented and sculpted also. And there is a 1,000-pillar hall with, I think, 985 pillars. The sculptures that we see in this particular hall are almost in the round, as if, breaking free from the base or the pillar, etc. Then there is a portrait gallery, or which is called the Tirumalai Chowdhury, where where you have different portraits of the king. Okay, so this is, of course, the aerial view that we are looking at of the compound from the top of the southern gopura. Okay, which is looking northward. All right. So this is there is another large compound, temple compound like this. We have in the Ranganatha Swami temple in the Sri Rangam. All right. In fact, there it almost surpasses the height also and the number of gopuras. I think there are 21 gopuras in that. Okay. Right. So most of the structures that we have here are from the 17th and 18th century. So Madurai was just, these are the different gopuras that I'm trying to show you from different angles. And this is the golden, main temple inside with the golden roof on top. So Madurai was a temple, not just merely a temple, I would say a place just for worship. It was the very focus of the cultural life of the people. In fact, it was a city into itself, having markets which were crowded with people. It was more like an institution, I would say. It is more important, in fact, to understand the sociological and cultural aspects, to understand the very, the temple as an organization. Yeah. So this is the main plan of the temple as per 1911 sketch that was made. So it has 11 colored gopuras. There are gateways to various shrines. You can see here multiple, walls are there. This is the famous lily tank here. These are the outer 4 gopuras that we have here, which are aligned along the Sundareshwar or Sundara shrine, as it is called. And Tirumalai's Chowdhury, the portrait gallery, all this we see here. Okay. So by Nayak time, as I have already, told you, the gopuras had become visually the most important element, in fact, in the South Indian temples. And here you can see the various gopuras of different, heights, different sizes. And here you can see the roof very, very clearly, the barrel vaulted roof in the Shala structure that we have seen as miniature shrines on the Dravidian superstructure. Okay. So this is the south side gopura, which is the tallest, and you can see the curvy linear. Although it is, bending inwards, all right, just as we saw in the Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the superstructure, it was going like this. And the colorful sculptures actually almost, they narrate the different legendary scenes from various Hindu texts that we have seen earlier also. So this is the golden lily tank in Meenakshi temple. And at the south end of the enclosure, this is the southern gopura you can see here rises above the tank, and where a very tall brass, this lamp column actually kind of punctuates the square pond, which is filled with lotus plants, right? You can clearly see here very nicely. So Meenakshi actually is a local goddess who fought a battle against Shiva. And then, of course, finally, she marries him. Okay. So the worship of Shiva as Sundareshwara and Meenakshi at Madurai, in fact, it also includes a fertility rite, okay, in which images of the god and the goddess are brought to bed together each night. Okay, so this is the typical feature of the Meenakshi temple that we need to remember. So this is the golden Viman over the sanctum that we have. Then this is, of course, the Meenakshi in the sanctum. This is the Meenakshi shrine. And this is, of course, the Madurai temple, Rath Yatra, that we get during the spring festival. Then this is Veer Vasantaraya Mandapa, it is called, at the Meenakshi temple. So this is a very immense hall which is lined with shops on either side. And it is almost, 75 meters long and was built in the early 18th century. Okay. So in fact, the hall runs along the main axis of the temple from the Sundareshwar shrine west to the outer Gopura, which is in the east direction. Okay, so in this picture, we are seeing that we are pointing towards the eastern exit. We are looking outward we are inside the temple and looking outside. Okay. Then this is, of course, the 1,000-pillared hall, and you can see the various pillars here and the sculptures, and I will show you some details also. Then this is a large Nataraj which is exhibited on a raised platform here in the same 1,000-pillared hall. Then there is a goddess here, perhaps Meenakshi on the side, stands to Shiva's left here. Dressed images like these are actually much used in worship, giving a much different impression than the bare sculptures that we see inside the museums. Okay. So these pendant buds that I told you, these are typical features of the Vijayanagar, art, which has this tradition is still being carried on, because as I've said, these were actually, they were serving the Vijayanagar kings at times, in earlier times. Okay. Fine. So these are some of the, every pillar, in fact, is carved with some kind of religious or secular sculpture. So you have a goddess here with an attendant here. Then the two-armed goddess here, you can, she rides a waterfowl here, you can clearly see. And there's an attendant with the chori, she's, fly whisk she's holding in one of her hands over her head. Yeah. So you can see these, although these are all part of these pillars, but they are almost, standing on their own accord, yeah, almost cut out from the pillar bases. This is another one. Female musician, you can see, very, very well depicted. And you can see a lot of Vijayanagar influence here, in fact. Then here, this is another goddess. She's riding a bird, in fact. So this 1,000-pillared hall, it occupies the northeast corner of the temple. Actually, it has 985 pillars, all right. And it contains many stunning more sculptures like this that we are looking at. Okay. Then there is also a Nandi sculpture inside this particular hall that we have. A place of honor it is occupying. Then this is the Nataraj we have inside the Meenakshi Temple Museum. And this Nataraj, in fact, from the temple museum is inside the 1,000-pillared hall only. So that, in fact, that hall itself has been converted into the museum. All right. In fact, it dates back to 15th century. So you can see the crescent moon here. It's almost floating along these, hair curls of Shiva. It has kind of shifted down. Okay. It is resting very prominently on the flying hair. Yeah. Then this is the Raja Tirumala Naik's Chaudhary, which is the portrait gallery, which actually is shown in the company painting, all right, which is titled as Madura. So we won't get into as to, I'll just tell you, the company paintings were actually done earlier by the British artists who came in search of, very interesting or romantic themes from Britain. And of course, India offered them ample opportunity, all kinds of these ruins they came across. And I mean, India provided them a lot of subjects to paint. And because by that time there was no photography, all right, so these paintings were also a means of documenting the Indian life, the kind of processions, the professions, what kind of gods worship, the temples, etc., the palaces, all kinds of festivals. All these things were being, painted by, by these company artists. And they were called company artists because this was the time when they were in the service of East India Company. And the company was actually employing these artists to make these paintings, which in turn were being sent back to Britain for the local population over there, for them to know as to how exotic the country India is. All right. And then, of course, there were a lot of slowly, there were a lot of Indian artists also who started painting in this particular fashion of these subdued colors, in watercolors, etc., etc. So this is a brief. I just thought I'll tell you about the company paintings. Yeah. So then you have these painted panels also, which are storytelling panels. Panels like this would actually be used by professionals, right? For professional storytellers to illustrate the tales, to the audience. And this is another one where this particular panel actually depicts the very founding legend of the Meenakshi temple. Then here we have the King Tirumalai and with his two queens, and there is a Chauri bearer here on the side also. So now you can, by looking at this particular, painted sculpture and painting in the background, the hierarchical perspective is very, very evident. The size of the king, the ruling king and his two wives. You can clearly see the very size of the king is so much larger because he is the protagonist in this particular artwork. Then we have already spoken about these Shaiv saints, the Shaiv Nayanamars. The most important ones, the three, the Sundara, Rappar, and the Sambandar. All right. So these are the three Shaiv saints that we see here. And in fact, they actually were, they were the ones who went from door to door singing, praises of Shiva, etc. But over the period of time, they themselves, they were being deified. All right. And deified means they were made into, deity forms, and they became objects of veneration. And you will find their sculptures or the icons also being installed inside the temple. And we've seen many of these Chola bronzes earlier, right? Then these are different kinds of Yali figures. We have elephant-headed Yali. Then you have a, canine, another version of that. Then this is very interesting sculpture. We have 5-headed Shiva in the Meenakshi temple. This is located just outside the entrance of the Sundareshwara shrine, which is the main temple, in fact. So it is relatively a very recent, carved towards the, I would say, end of the 19th century. Shiva with 5 heads. It's a metaphysical concept, which I have already spoken about in great detail. It kind of represents the highest form of the god, representing the 5 elements, the basic elements, or the Panchabhutas. Then, of course, this is a very beautiful sculpture again. Vishnu gives away his sister, the bride Meenakshi's hand into the waiting hand of the god Shiva, or the groom Shiva, I would say that. In fact, the temple commemorates this legend every year with a festive procession. Okay. Then briefly we'll talk about another temple, the Sri Ranganath temple, which is in the Sri Rangam. Okay. Vishnu temple at the Sri Rangam in Tiruchirappalli. Okay. So this is the largest temple complex in South India with 21 gopuras, 13 on the axial lines with the shrine, and which is still unfinished in the south. Okay. And there are 7 concentric rectangular enclosures. And naturally, to have these multiple gopuras, you need to have those many, prakara walls or the boundary walls also. And this temple is built along the north-south axis. Okay. So this is, the temple is, of course, dedicated to Anant Sheshai Vishnu, and the 12 Vaishnavite saints also, who are called the Alvar saint. Like the Shaiv saints, we say Nayanamar, the Vaishnav saints are called the Alvars, and they are 12 in numbers. So, of course, here we have the different parts of the temple in a very straightforward manner. We have the 1,000-pillared mandapa, the horse court, the Garud mandapa, the Rang Vilasam, Vasant mandap, the mirror room, all these are there, which you can, they are worth seeing. And of course, the Sri Ranganatha Swami is inside the main sanctum here inside. All right, yeah. And of course, in the lying posture, it's very, very charming idol of the great beauty and grace, I would say that. So this is the 1,000-pillared hall you have. So this almost becomes a norm as part of the temple complex. And this is the horse court near the east gate of the 4th Prakara wall we have. And you have these rampant horses here, carvings on side this. So these pillars, again, reminiscent of the Vijayanagar period. And these horses also, I would say, much, much influenced by that. This is, of course, a detail of that, right? These are some more sculptures from there. You have the Krishna's sculpture in one of the niches. And a musician here. Then another temple we have from Nayak period is this Subramanyam shrine, right, from inside the Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur, at the northwest corner. And it has similar Dwarpalas who are almost similar in pose, full-bodied, animated, but made of black stone here. So most of the Dwarpalas you will find made of in black stone. So except for the height and the entire, scale of the temple, it almost copies the Brihadishwara temple. Okay. So also called the Murugan shrine or Kartikeya or Skanda. These are the different names of the god who is installed inside the Garbhagriha. Okay. In fact, the Nayak paintings, I told you when I was talking about the Brihadishwara temple paintings inside the circumambulation in the Garbhagriha and on the first floor also. So, in fact, they were revealed when one layer of these Nayak paintings were removed from there. And that's how those paintings from Chol period came into light. So there was another coating of Nayak paintings which were done later. So this is the addition of the walkway and the gopura that we have at the Rameshwar temple from Nayak period. So this again corridor is that of 1,000-pillared hall at Rameshwaram. And these, in fact, served to connect different parts of the temple while enclosing certain areas. Okay. Yeah. So these are some of the addition of the paintings at the Chidambaram temple. So the story of Bhikshatana and Mohini, the Rishi Patnis getting, seduced, and the Rishis send out the snake, the tiger, and dwarf to kill Shiva, but Shiva kind of overpowers them and use them as his adornments, all right, and performs the Tandav dance at Chidambaram, also considered to be the center of the universe. And that's the, importance of Chidambaram temple, that it is this place where Shiva himself performed the Tandav. Then we have some beautiful bronzes also from Nayak period. And again, you will see much influence from the Vijayanagar period, right? So, because as I have already told you that the Nayak dynasty, in fact, emerged during the declining period of the Vijayanagar period. And the Nayakars were originally military governors under the Vijayanagar Empire. And after the Battle of Talkot, this is when several of them actually, they declared independence and became rulers of small territories. This is another one, the Dwarpala figure. Then I'll quickly touch upon some Kerala temples also. So in fact, Kerala has produced some very important Vastu Shastra texts like the Tantra Samuchay written by Narayan. And then we have the Shilparatna by Sri Kumar, in fact, which is, this one is datable almost to 16th century. Both these treatises are meant for temple architecture, okay. So the Kerala's temples, in fact, show a very distinctive style, which is very unique in itself. It is largely the local adaptation of the Dravid or the South Indian tradition, considerably influenced by the various geographical factors like the high precipitation or the kind of rains that we get in this particular area, and the availability of the laterite formation and the dense jungles that we have in this area, okay. Not just I would say geography, but also interaction with other factors like the politics, culture, economy of the region that actually influenced greatly the evolution of the Kerala temple architecture. So history, in fact, also played very important contribution to the Kerala temple architecture. The exposure to Arabian Sea on its east side, brought in close contact between the ancient people of Kerala with major maritime civilizations like the Chinese, Egyptians, Romans, Arabs, etc. So this kind of maritime trade actually helped to bring influences from these various civilizations into Kerala architecture. Okay. So in fact, the political revival of the Cheras in the 9th century, or probably even earlier, coupled with the impact of the Bhakti movement that we've spoken about earlier, provided a great boost to the building of the temples. Kerala's external trade, of course, of spices and others provided great prosperity, all right, which is an essential factor for building of great temples. Yeah. Okay. So typical features of temples from Kerala will have more than, in fact, Kerala has more than 2,000 Hindu temples of active worship today. Okay. And several buildings they have in one complex which is enclosed by a walled enclosure. The main shrine is called Sri Kovil here, which could be square, circular, apsidal, many different shapes. And mostly they will have stone basement, but rest of the structure is built of wood or brick. Okay. And most of these temples are known for their dramatic roof shapes, as you are seeing on the screen, which are mostly made of copper or wood or both. Like here you see these are wooden structures. Here on top you have copper, which has kind of this patina on top here. So in fact, the roof almost extends beyond the walls of the temple in this fashion. So the walls are much inside. This is, of course, the outside boundary wall and the temple inside. We are looking at the superstructure of the temple. And these double pedimented roofs are, if you remember, they are very much reminiscent of Kashmir temples and dwellings, where we got these double pediments. In fact, in Kashmir, we have this kind of structure because of heavy snow, right? And here we have the similar structure because of the heavy rains. And in Kerala, we do not have those kind of imposing gopuras that we just saw during Nayaka's period. And you will find sculptures here in metal, wood, ivory, and stone, because they are all locally available. But wood is the more preferred material, I would say. You have, wooden carved ceilings, mostly polychrome. They are all painted with sometimes paintings or just solid paintings. Then we have many wall paintings from Matancheri Palace and Padmanabha Swami temple or palace also are typical of this region. Yeah. So these are the different parts of the Kerala temple. This is the main Sri Kovil temple. Like this, you can have roof, and this is the boundary wall. This is the mini boundary wall, the mandapam here, the Balipitham here, and this is the compound that you have here, the temple well here. And this is, of course, the Gopuram. Major temples will have four Gopura, all in four directions, east, west, south, and west. So, in fact, Thiruvananthapuram, right? Sri Padmanabha Swami temple, in fact, is the only temple in Kerala which has a huge Gopuram that we saw in Madurai temple or Sri Rangaswamy temple. All right. And with the stoneworks. And in fact, we have seen these structures in Kashmir temple again, this kind of, these pedimented roofs that we have, or hill temples, we have seen this kind of gateways, right? So the climatic conditions actually govern this kind of roofs and that we encounter in these particular temples here. So this is the, Sri Kovil or the Sanctum Sanctorum, the part of the temple where the the idol or the god or the goddesses is situated. All right, it's called the Sri Kovil. Very interesting roof that you can see here. And as I said, it kind of goes beyond the walls of the temple, as you can see here. We saw this in the Bangla roof also. It was kind of coming out from the walls like this, right? And of course, the story is covered with copper or gold sometimes. So this is Vattukanath's temple in Thrissur. Yeah. So inside the complex, there are 3 shrines. We have 2 circular shrines that you can see here, and 1 square garbhagriha you have here. Shiva, Shankar, Narayan, both are circular, and the last one is dedicated to Ramaya. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Padmanabha Swami temple, which has been so much in news recently. It was in the almost middle of 18th century that the then king, Martandavarma, rewrote the history of the temple by, a new 18-feet idol was sculpted with almost 12,000 shaligram stones and a mix of jaggery and some kind of herbs, right? And by way of that, this particular sculpture was created. And in 39, there's another new idol that was created. So this is the idol that I was talking about. So Ananta Shayanam. Okay, Lord Vishnu's Ananta Shayanam idol is the most sacred spot inside the temple that we know. The idol is said to have made, I've already told you, of 12,000. So you can see these small stones that are there. Shaligrams are actually the avyakt form of Vishnu, just as we have Shiv Linga, likewise we have Shaligram when, you don't have the Vishnu depicted in human form. Okay, right. Then there is an architectural wonder that I want to talk about. The temple is modeled after the, in fact, Adikeshwar temple that we have in Tiruvattar in Tamil Nadu. And the deity of the Padmanabha Swami temple is very similar to that temple also, both in reclining posture or the Shayan Murti. So the architecture is a blend of Dravidian and Kerala style. And Dhwaj-stamba, etc., all that we have in Kerala style. So these are some of the beautiful murals that we have inside the temple complex. In fact, the shrines of both Padmanabha Swami and the Sri Krishna Swami. So there are these 2 main temples inside the compound. They have these mural paintings inside. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is, of course, the basic plan of the temple. And, there is a Samarangra Sutra Dhar and the Tantra Samuchaya, the 2 Vastu texts, which actually recommend that Vishnu temples, fronting east, such that the main deity, it lies, facing the rising sun. Okay, so this is how the the very sculpture of the Padmanabha Swami is, you will find here. This is the eastern direction here. Okay. So a visual hallmark of the temple actually is the Gopuram. I told you this is the only temple in Kerala which has this huge Gopuram. Okay, a tower made of granite at the base and the brick and mortar which almost rises to the 100 feet above the ground, with the foundation which is almost very, very deep, 40 feet deep. Okay. So it has this pyramidal structure and rests above the main east entrance of the temple. Okay. And of course, there are ornate sculptures that you have on this. And okay. So what I want to really talk about is that there are 7 floors to this Gopuram, which you can clearly see here. Okay, 7 floors are there, with a pair of windows like opening at each floor, from where you can see through and through. Okay, from inside and outside of the temple. And of course, the top you have this kalash and the barrel vaulted roof, which we normally get on all the gopuras in the south. Okay. So the precise orientation of the gopuram becomes very, very evident. Precise orientation means exactly in the east-west. This is the entrance in the east direction that I'm talking about, which are, absolutely aligned along the temple. So what happens that there is a very rare visual spectacle that one can see, or it unfolds twice every year. And when does it happen? On the days of the equinoxes. One gets to see the setting sun passing through, exactly through all the window openings in the Gopuram in succession. In fact, in roughly between the interval of 5 minutes, you will see. On days past these equinox, in fact, the setting sun will get blocked by this, because it only happens when equinox is basically when the days when you have the equal day and night, number of hours are there. All right, that's where we have that. So in fact, this picture was taken in 2017. Okay. So here we can see clearly. So the 2 days of the year when the day and the night are of equal duration. Okay. So like this, with every passing 5 minutes, you will see the sun setting. So likewise, we are seeing it here this time. Okay. So this actually goes to show the engineering skill that was present at that time. This kind of planning actually requires very, very precise engineering. That's what I wanted to tell you. And unless and until it was exactly placed in the exact east-west line, this particular phenomenon will not occur. Okay. So as we move away from the dates of the equinoxes, which is 22nd September and roughly 21st March. So then actually the sunrise and the sunset, they actually do not happen exactly in the east-west direction. It is kind of little bit deviated, probably towards the little northern east or west and south, something like that. Okay. Then another temple, very popular Kerala temple, is the Guruvayur temple, which is home to historic Sri Krishna temple here, which it is also called the Dwarka of the south, and it is among the most revered and popular pilgrimage destination we have in Kerala and the entire country, I would say that. The central shrine, of course, is believed to have been built in the 17th century, of course. And the architectural style and the individual elements inside the shrine are beautiful, representing the history of the palace, the place. This is, of course, and there was a huge fire in this temple. So this is the map you have before, and this is the map that you have after that. Then these are, of course, some of the other enclosures that we have. This is the main Sri Kovil that I wanted to show you. Yeah. And these are some of the Gopal Krishna murals that we have inside. Then also I wanted to talk about some modern temple. I've picked up Akshardham Temple. 2005 it was inaugurated. So the main attraction of this Swaminarayan Akshardham complex is, of course, the very temple. Of course, there are many other buildings that you have inside. It rises almost 43-meter high and 96 meters wide it has, and extends almost 109 meters. It is very intricately carved, I can say, with flora, fauna, dancers, musicians, deities, etc., etc. And under the central dome, there lies a 11 feet high, sculpture of Swaminarayan, the head of this particular cult of Swaminarayan, seated in Abhay Mudra, to whom the temple is dedicated. So Swaminarayan is, of course, surrounded by images of the lineage, the faith's lineage of other gurus, depicted either in devotional posture or in a posture of service. Okay. In fact, each murti is made of panch dhatu, or 5 metals in accordance to Hindu tradition. The temple also houses the murtis of Ram, Sita, or Krishna, Radha, Shiv, Parvati, Lakshmi Narayan, etc. So when we are looking at this, it was, of course, designed by Virendra Trivedi, one of the members of the Sompura family of Gujarat, who are the very, traditional sthapatis, okay, who are also instrumental in making most of the Gujarat temples. So the entire temple is constructed from Rajasthani pink sandstone and Italian Carrara marble, okay. So based on traditional Hindu architectural guidelines, or the Shilp Shastras, on maximum temple span, it makes no use of ferrous metal, etc. Thus, it has no support of steel or and concrete, for that matter. So the temple also has this Gajendra Pitha that we can see at the base here, a plinth paying tribute to the elephants for its importance to Hindu culture, I would say, and India's history. It contains almost 148 or 150 life-sized elephants, in total weighing a total of 3,000 tons, I would say. So the elephant basement almost reminds one of, the Ellora basement that we had, those huge elephants, and other temples and caves like Pitalkhora, etc. And when we look at this, it also consists of ornately carved, almost more than 200 carved pillars, 9 domes are there, 20,000 sculptures of swamis, devotees, acharyas, etc. So when we look at this structure, it's typical Maru Gurjar or the Solanki style of architecture that I have shown you earlier. We have seen all the Jain temples in Gujarat and Rajasthan, the Modhera Sun temple near Patan, etc., from where we saw these kind of pillars, and the architecture we have seen in those areas. And it is only very natural because the same lineage, the family lineage, the architect who was responsible for the making of this. And the dome of the central hall, again, the Nabhi Chand, the ceiling that we saw in the Dilwara temples, having, pillars arranged in the radially supporting the dome in the center. Yeah. So here I see this feature probably came from a Dravidian architecture, because we don't have this kind of a structure in Nagar temples. Then I thought I'll show you some temples outside India. So when we are looking at this building of Ganpati temple at Wimbledon, if not mentioned, I can easily mistake it for a Christian church building, right? So in fact, it is only this small Nagar Shekhri Shikhar is the only structure which is testifying to it being a Hindu temple. Okay. Then we have another temple, Sri Swaminarayan temple, yeah, again in England. And then we have this Dravidian style temple, Murugan temple. Okay. So other than the tall Gopuram that we are seeing in Dravidian style, rest of the building almost appears to be a normal adaptation from a British architecture. Okay. So as much as we thrive, and I would say strive to protect our culture and heritage overseas, the effect of environment, I would say, is bound to seep in. And the resultant temples appear much, I would say, removed from their local context or Indian context, just as we saw the base of the Akshardham temple with elephant pita. Now, which is actually much removed from its context. When this kind of temple was being built with this elephant kind of base, it is in the 21st century, it is not an everyday scene that we see elephants. It's a rarity, in fact, especially in cities. So when these Vastu texts were written, actually, and temples were built, elephants frolicking, all that, it must have been a very commonplace, and that's how they came into the design vocabulary or sculptural vocabulary. And similarly, when we see so many temple sculptures inside the museums, they are totally removed from their context and lose their, connect, actually say, with, or relevance, in fact. Hence, in fact, the very concept of having the site museums, which we have, the ASI museums, at the site of the find or the temple or monument to which they belonged, is a very brilliant idea, because the visitor going to these site museums can easily connect the sculptures with the temple or whatever monument that they have come from. Okay. So with this, I'm going to round up today's lecture. And just a brief overview I can give you. We started with the first Vastu Purush Mandal, and I spoke about the different cosmological, cosmological influences that get into in the making of the temple. Then we spoke about the sculptures and the iconography that we have in temples. The early temples from Gupta period, we spoke about Nachna Kuthara, Bhumra, and then the Shavdar temple and the Vishnu temple at Devgarh. Then we went up, we saw the Kashmir temples, the Avantiswamy, the Martan temple, some other hill temples we saw. Then we came down to Rajasthan, Gujarat, the Modhera Sun temple, the Dilwara Sun temple. And these are the temples I was talking about when I showed you some of the Akshardham images. Then, of course, the Khajuraho temple, the Lakshman temple, Kandarya Mahadev, we spoke about the erotic imagery inside the temples. Then, of course, the Orissa temples, the Parashurameshwara, the beautiful gem-like Mukteshwara temple we are looking at, Lingeshwara, Lingaraj temple, the Konark temple, the Rajarani temple, we learned about them. Then some of the cave temples we saw, the Elephanta caves, the Badami caves, the Ellora cave, Kalashna temple here. Then we come down to the Pallava period, the Pancharathas that we saw from at Mahabalipuram or Mabalapuram, the Kanchipuram temple we saw, the Shore temple. Then, of course, the later Chalukyans, the structural temples, the Virupaksha temple, Mallikarjun temple, etc., etc. Then we spoke about the Chola temples, the Brihadishwara, the Grand Brihadishwara temple, the Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Then Darasuram, the Erateshwara temple, the Kumbakonam temples. And then we spoke about the Hoysala period, the Hoysaleshwara temple, the Chanakeshwara, and then finally the Keshwa temple at Somnathpur. Then we came to Vijayanagar Empire. We spoke about the various small temples, the Ugna Narsimha, the Ganesh shrine, the most important, then the Virupaksha, again Virupaksha, and then finally the Vitthal temple. No. And then we spoke today about the Nayak temples here, the Kerala temples, and then some modern temples. Okay. So I think with this, I have almost covered most of the temples. Of course, it was just a very, very quick overview of the temples that we have in India. So your learning should not stop here. This is only, I'm trying to initiate you into the temple architecture and the sculptures. And this should actually get you more interested in, getting to learn more and more about this beautiful heritage. Okay. So some of the questions that I have received today, I'll try to answer them. In fact, one question that I got was, by looking at the huge variety of treasure of temples across India, I wonder why in present time, in spite of technological advancements, we still do not find such aesthetics and techniques in the field of architecture. How they were able to produce such amazing structures with beauty, precision, and variety. So my answer to this question will be, temple building is not a mechanical process or as erecting any other civil structure. One needs to know all the sciences which I mentioned right in the beginning, how the sthapatis has to be, and other people who were involved in the temple building had to be of pious nature, good conduct, very devoted. The sculptors or the painters or even architects, in fact, they did not inscribe their names because the services rendered by them were their actually offerings to the deity. Such was the devotion. And with such charged emotions, they are required to build a temple, which is kind of, throbbing with this kind of energy. Secondly, nowadays, we live in a time where things are machine made and everything that the machine churns out are identical. So there is no uniqueness in each piece of sculpture or architectural elements, right? Individuality, in fact, is totally lost. Also, the time taken to make these temples that we saw during the course of this series ran anywhere between 10, 20, 30, 50, or multiple centuries also, as we have seen that from one dynasty to another dynasty, there were, a number of additions, improvements, or Jeernodhar, which was happening to these particular temples. So as we saw in Akshardham temple, it has very beautiful carvings, the elephant pita, etc., but they are not relevant today, right? And we do not live in that world anymore, nor do we have patrons like the kings of earlier times. We live in a secular society and a democratic society. The government cannot spend the taxpayers' money, although the temples receive huge donations. I do not deny that. But also we have lost the craft of sculpting those kind of sculptures, which needed a lot of patience, time, and most importantly, the devotion. I would say that. I think these are the main reasons that actually contribute that. Akshardham, I have no bias against it. It's a beautiful temple, but you can clearly, see how the earlier temples of the same period, if you look at the Modhera Sun temple or any of the Jain temples from Maru Gurjar's style, they are, the art is far, far superior. Yeah. Okay. Then there was a question about the difference between the Chola and the Mughal architecture. All right. So that's a very common, answer to that. So all the Chola, now why say only Chola? Most of the Indian architecture or the temple architecture definitely is based on the trabeate pattern, which actually involves the posts and the lintel, or I would say beams and the columns. And whereas all the Islamic architecture or the Mughal architecture, it is called the arcuate, all right, where with the help of arches, we have a keystone and the whole structure is created. Okay. Then there was another question about Chola architecture as to why Chola architecture is so famous, right? And what is so special about Chola architecture. Okay. So, of course, as you can see in this picture also, we are looking at the grand Viman of the Brihadeshwara temple, very famous for their enormity, the vastness, all right. in fact, Brihadishvara was considered to be the tallest structure of its time. Also, it was known as the Dakshin Meru, so which was almost, equaling it to the Meru mountain. Okay. And also, the Chola period is very much known for their bronzes, the Chola bronzes, the Chalamurtis, which became very popular, right? Which were taken out as the Utsav Murtis in the temple processions. Okay. And the Chola kings were very, very influential kings, as I told you, the Rajaraj Chola, then his son Rajendra Chola. And they had sway right up till Southeast Asia, right? So that's how it was a very, very powerful empire. Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Rajendra Chola went right up till the region of Ganga. And I mean, that's how he created this particular city, Gangaikonda Cholapuram, that he was able to not only notionally, but he brought the water from Ganga. And, I showed you that tank which was getting filled for the daily abhishekam of the linga. Okay. Then another question I have is, of course, somebody wanted to know more about the Vyalas or the Sharduls. Okay. So I'll tell you a brief story in one of the Puranas also, and then later in Raghuvansham by Kalidas. In fact, there is a small story where he says that, for 21 days, King Dilip accompanied the cow Nandini. Now, Nandini is the daughter of the cow Kamdhenu. Okay, and King Dilip was actually cursed by Kamdhenu because he had kind of ignored her when he went to the Indralok to help Indra in some, war, etc. So it was quite a common practice. If you read Shakuntalam also, where they say Dushyant also went to help Indra at one time. Okay. So here, King Dilip is accompanied by cow Nandini, the daughter of this cow, okay, and which was given to him by Rishi Vashisht, okay. But on the 22nd day, the cow is, there is a lion which is trying to attack the cow, okay. So, in fact, the King Dilip, in fact, he offers his own body to save the cow and asks the lion to spare the body of the cow, okay. And in fact, he just, closes his eyes and he kind of almost submits himself to the lion, okay. And of course, the lion consents, and when the king presents himself, to be devoured by the lion, and then he opens his eyes and he sees that the terrific lion was nowhere to be seen, in fact, because, so this is when actually the king looks absolutely baffled as, Nandini, in fact, the cow, she comes forth and she says that everything that you saw here was a Maya, all right, or an illusion, all right. And now you are relieved of all the Kamdhenu's curse, and now you can have a son, you can go back to your kingdom, okay, and I'm very, very pleased with you. So, in fact, King Dilip is the king of the Ikshvaku clan, and you have the Raghu, his son then was born, and then you have Aja, then Dashrath, and then, of course, the 4 sons of Dashrath. So, the Vyala or Yali or Shardul, basically, in Vastu Shastra, it recognizes almost 16 these types of Vyalas, and this is the mythological character with the body or a head of a lion and appendage from other creatures like the the face mainly is could be anything, parrot or elephant, and the body is that of a lion, all right. So normally you will find the Vyala with 2 human warriors, which actually is a recurrent pattern, rising and falling in rhythmic flow, all right. And in fact, it is said that they are threatening the devotee constantly with the threat of lion. Okay, so the here lion represents Maya, as I just told you, or illusion. So among the two men that we have, one is seen at the feet of the Vyala and another is near the head, carved in the round that you can see. So the first warrior actually represents as he approaches the Garbhagriha, the inner shrine, and he kind of draws the sword of knowledge to protect himself from Maya. And the second warrior who kind of crouches below the, and seizes the tail of the beast or the lion. He represents the man who's brandishing the shield of compassion or dispassion, I would say, or vairagya, and holding Maya in check. Okay. So the Vyala also becomes a symbol of controlling one's desires and ego. If the whole group is placed on the head of an elephant, sometimes we have seen in Orisen temples, the Gajakranta Singha in Konark temple also we saw. So the elephant is also considered as the storehouse of darkness or ignorance. Okay. So the lion, which is the frolicsome after having overcome the darkness, in fact, after, pouncing on the elephant, it scatters the brilliant pearls of, that trickle down from the forehead of the elephant. Such is the myth, actually. In many, in fact, all of Kalidasa's literature or the Kadambari also, you will find this mentioned every, where repeatedly, where, after, from the head of the elephant, there are pearls which they come out. Okay. And so by doing this, when the lion is kind of pouncing on the elephant, these pearls now belong to the lion, and he kind of gathers them and strings them in his mouth. And we have seen the face of glory also, the Kirti Mukha. There also we have the lion face with these pearl festooning, and he holds them and, he wears them as a necklace also sometimes, or along his limbs also. Sometimes you will find them alongside the chains, like curling, etc. So this is the story of the Shardul, and that's how you find them. And these are also considered to be the protective, mythical animals for they are of the temple, and they are mostly carved on the outside of the temple walls. Yeah. Then another question was, of course, about the placement of the Surasundaris, or the celestial beauties that we have, the Apsaras, the Nartakis, the Yakshinis, etc., or the Digdevis. So this is a wall panel I'm trying to show you from the Khajuraho temple, Parshanath temple. Okay. So this is nothing but, this is the active bar, all right, or the image of, or embodiment of movement, or, or Shakti. So as Apsara, of course, she's the, movement in the atmosphere. As Yakshini, she's the movement in the vegetation. As Nartaki, she's the movement inside the body of the man and is shown as a dancer. In fact, her iconography also describes the various, places. They are various, I would say, places inside the body, and they are not actually very, very sharply defined, I would say. And her association also with the tree, Shalbanjika, with flowering vines, declare her image as another Yakshini figure. So these celestial beauties, or they belong to the Avaran Devtas, outside the temple walls, on the temple walls outside, surrounding the other divinities, as we have the Tirthankar here in the center. And their number is very, very large. Their figures are repeated many, many times on temple, in various different poses, in Alingan, or, carrying out daily activities all around the walls, to either side of the deity images also. Okay. So Surasundari is nothing but one of the names of the Shakti, which is carved on the temple walls. Shakti means energy. Okay. So the very primordial power and the substance of the world, which is we call the Shakti. So while every man is not, proficient or equipped to ride the Shardul, he may be led by the Shakti, and he may be able to grasp the meaning of her hand gestures or postures and actions, etc. So while the Shardul is the agent of active man, I would say, various images of the Shakti assist, his contemplative or passive nature. So the image of Shardul and Shakti are collateral in most of the temples that we see. They alternate the walls and pillars of the temples, like the Khajuraho temples I'm showing you right now. So the very rearing body of the animal or the lion here and the shape of the women, they are actually seen to sway in a very, very similar curves. And they are open in nature and, form, but though they actually perform different functions and appearance. Okay. Surasundaris are also represented for the as the fertility rites, or they can just be the there for the beautification of the temple walls. So these are some of the different reasons which are being attested by different Vastu Shastras and art historians. Then there was a question, which is the earliest Sanskrit inscriptions we have in temples. Okay. So especially the religious edifices that we are concerned with. So this is actually a very, very controversial question, I would say, and I cannot name just any one inscription which I will say is the oldest, because these are really very, very old, running into the early before the current era, all right, BC, that period. So I'm trying to show you the earliest that I know of, the Heliodorus column, okay, which is located in Besnagar, Madhya Pradesh. This is the earliest inscriptional evidence that we have available, which has reference to Krishna or the Bhagavata or the Vasudeva. And in fact, this pillar was erected in honor of Vasudev, god of gods, by Heliodorus of Takshila, and has been dated to 2nd century BC. Now, it's very interesting to know that this Heliodorus was actually, he adopted Bhagavad, religion. He was a Greek ambassador in the court of a Shunga king, right? And it is he who actually, it's called the Heliodorus column. And these are the inscriptions which we find here. And it is inscribed, in fact, in Brahmi language. Okay, the script is Brahmi, all right. And the language is mostly Prakrit, but with some Sanskritized spellings also. So Prakrit and Sanskrit, in fact, they always go hand in hand. In fact, most of the plays that you will read, the earlier plays of Kalidas, there are many, translations. The original verses were written in Prakrit, in fact, which जिसको हम कहते हैं ना बोलचाल की भाषा है. जैसे हम बात करते हैं, normally we do not write like that. So it was Sanskrit was the language of the literate or the written language, and Prakrit was the everyday language. So this particular column has these two languages and the Brahmi script. Okay. So from here, I'm sure you may have read these lines by now. So 7-line inscription it has, and it clearly shows that he was a Bhagavata, the devotee of Krishna. Okay. Okay. But I will not stop here. Then there is Hathibad or Gosundi, inscriptions, which again date back to 1st century BC, which, amplify the presence of Bhagavad cult or the Vasudev cult that talks about Sankarshan and Vasudev, etc. in stone temple, which was dedicated to them in 1st century BC. Then earliest Sanskrit inscriptions are also found from South India in Andhra Pradesh during the Satvahana period, like the Saptamatrika cult, which was evident at that time. And besides this, there are many inscriptions we have from Tamil Nadu, where we have some inscriptions in Tamil, some in Sanskrit also. So it's a very, very I would say, debatable point, and it's a mute point, I would say, where we want to find out as to which were the earliest Sanskrit inscriptions. Okay. Then I will take this last question. What is the connection between the Sri Chakra or the Vastu Purush Mandal and this Sri Yantra, etc. Okay, so all these three I'm trying to show you on the screen. So although all the three mean the very same, they have somehow seem to have acquired distinct forms, I would say. For instance, chakra, in fact, suggests a circular form, while the mandal might be a figure, right, of any shape, but commonly a square form. While both chakra and mandala are linear presentations, yantra is a three-dimensional projection. Okay, it is a solid form, right? These are two-dimensional, both of these. So the Sri Chakra and the Sri Yantra is a form of mystical diagram used in the Sri Vidya school of Hinduism. Okay, it consists of 9 interlocking triangles, 4 upwards ones which represent Shiva, and 5 which are downward, which represent Shakti. So all these surround the central point, the Bindu, and these triangles actually, they represent the entire cosmos and the human body. And similarly, we spoke about the Vastu Purush Mandal, which also represents the body of the Vastu Purush in the shape of a man. And when we saw the Pad Vinyas, we did all the different movements of the cosmic bodies like the sun, moon, the stars. They are all, regulated, the Ashtadikpalas, etc., with Brahma, in the center, in the Brahmasthan. So the ground plan and the vertical elevation are cast in 2 dimensions in the shape of the Vastu Purush Mandal. And it is a 3-dimensional representation of the temple, is a 3-dimensional representation of the same structure of Vastu Purush Mandal. Okay. So whether you call it chakra or mandal or yantra, it represents a sphere of influence and brings together brings together and energizes, I would say, all the various components that we have in the cosmos. So Sri Yantra is the most powerful and auspicious, we know, of all the yantras. It is the genetic code, I would say, of the cosmos. All right, it kind of represents the very, energy of the goddess Shakti. Okay. So just as the Sri Chakra is the unfolding of this central bindu here in the center, the temple is also the expansion of the deity, which is residing inside the Brahmasthan at the center. So both the forms actually employ the imagery of an all-encompassing or enveloping the entire space and the time, okay, issuing out of the very womb. Okay, in case of Sri Chakra, the bindu is the dimensionless, all right, or avyakta, I would say, and is the not perceptible, imperceptible source of energy. And on the other hand, the idol, the very vigraha or the icon that we have inside the Garbhagriha at the Brahmasthan, which represents the manifestation of that very imperceptible energy, or the very, the highest principle or the energy, and the entire temple kind of radiates with energy for that matter. I think with this, we have almost finished all the questions that I had received. I have received some questions actually that almost covers the entire curriculum that we have already gone through in these past 3 months. So I don't think I'm going to take that. I'm going to stop share here. Okay. And yes.
Thank you, madam. आपके लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। और अब मैं जीतू भाई से निवेदन करूंगा, वो जुड़े हुए हैं, कि वो इसमें 2 शब्द जरूर बोलेंगे। व्योम शाह जी, जीतू भाई जी को इसमें जोड़िए प्लीज। जीतू भाई जी सुन रहे हैं क्या?
हाँ, मैं सुन रहा हूँ। और
हाँ जी
आज
सर,
मैंने
तो आप भी इस पूरे कार्यक्रम के प्रेरणा स्रोत रहे हैं, तो इसकी सफलता पर मैडम को बधाई दीजिए और आगे के लिए कुछ हम लोगों के लिए आशा बंधाइए कि इस तरह के कार्यक्रम मिलते रहें और यह जो कार्यक्रम हुए हैं इसको हम लोग छपवाने के लिए अग्रसर हों। तो कृपया 2 शब्द बोल करके हम लोगों को अनुग्रहित करें, आदरणीय जेबी शाह जी।
नमस्कार डॉक्टर पवन जी, आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आपने बहुत अच्छी तरह से ये पूरा कोर्स हम लोगों को अलग अलग दृष्टिकोण से भारतीय स्थापत्य विद्या एवं मूर्ति कला पर प्रकाश डाला। उसके लिए हम आपके बहुत आभारी हैं। सबसे पहले मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि जब हमने यह कोर्स डिजाइन किया और अनाउंस किया बीएल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडोलॉजी के द्वारा, तो पूरे देश के कई जिज्ञासुओं को इसमें बहुत अधिक रुचि थी और बहुत सारे जिज्ञासु इसमें जुड़े। करीब 800 रजिस्ट्रेशन हुए थे और अंत तक बहुत सारे जिज्ञासु इसमें शामिल रहे और सभी ने इस पूरे कोर्स को बहुत अच्छी तरह सुना, समय समय पर अपनी जिज्ञासा प्रस्तुत की है। आपने उन जिज्ञासाओं को बहुत ही सटीक ढंग से और आधार के साथ उसका समाधान किया है। इसके लिए भी मैं आपको धन्यवाद देता हूँ। यह श्रेणी इसलिए महत्वपूर्ण थी कि आज के युग में हम इस विद्या के प्रति बहुत उदासीन हो गए हैं। हमारे पास इतना समृद्ध स्थापत्य का खजाना होते हुए भी हम यह नहीं जानते हैं कि हमारे पास क्या है। विश्व के सबसे बड़ी संपत्ति भारतीय स्थापत्य कला में छिपी हुई है। बहुत सारे अलग अलग स्थापत्य कला है, शिल्प कला है और साथ ही साथ हमारा इतिहास भी उसके साथ जुड़ा हुआ है। अलग अलग समय पर अलग अलग राजा महाराजाओं ने और भक्तों ने बहुत ही सुंदर, कलात्मक और श्रेष्ठ कोटि के मंदिरों का निर्माण किया है। आपने बहुत ही अच्छी तरह इन सब का ज्ञान करवाया है। आपकी जो शैली वाकई में बहुत ही अच्छी थी। आपने बहुत ही सुंदर चित्रों के साथ, आपके पिक्चर्स बहुत ही सुंदर थे। बीच बीच में आपने 3 डायमेंशन वाले एक दो बार बताया, उसके लिए भी आपको बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ। हमारे साथ जितने भी जिज्ञासु जुड़ते रहे और इसका अध्ययन करते रहे, मैं सभी जिज्ञासुओं को भी धन्यवाद देता हूँ। बीएल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडोलॉजी के द्वारा अलग अलग समय पर अलग अलग कार्यक्रमों का आयोजन होता रहता है। आपने पिछले साल मिनिएचर पेंटिंग्स पर बहुत ही सुंदर श्रेणी का संचालन किया था। इस बार आपने मंदिर और स्थापत्य कला के बारे में हमें बहुत ही सुंदर यह कार्यक्रम का संचालन किया। उसके लिए भी मैं आपका आभारी हूँ। संस्थान की तरफ से हमारे संस्थान के ट्रस्टीगण निर्मल भाई भोगीलाल, जो बीएल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडोलॉजी के संस्थापक के पुत्र हैं, भोगीलाल लहरचंद जी के पुत्र प्रताप भाई भोगीलाल और प्रताप भाई भोगीलाल के पुत्र निर्मल भोगीलाल, उनकी भी बहुत इच्छा रहती है कि इस प्रकार के कार्यक्रम होते रहें। हमारे साथ हमारे अध्यक्ष श्री राजकुमार ओसवाल जी, जब से हम ये कार्यक्रम की हम लोगों ने घोषणा की, तब से उनकी रुचि इस विषय में और बढ़ती रही है। हमारे एक और मित्र, सहयोगी और ट्रस्टी श्री दर्शन कुमार जी, जिसको हम डीके साहब कहते हैं, वो भी इस कार्यक्रम के साथ हृदय से जुड़े हुए हैं। और हमारे एक और ट्रस्टी श्री सुगत जैन, जिनके पिता श्री अभी रहे नहीं, धनेश कुमार जी, वो भी इस प्रकार के कार्यक्रमों को बहुत ही लाइक करते थे। आपने उस श्रेणी में, जैन आर्ट श्रेणी में भी एक लेक्चर दिया है। तो ये सारा कार्यक्रम हमारे इंस्टीट्यूट का एक अभिन्न अंग है। आपने इस लंबे कार्यक्रम को आज अंतिम मुकाम तक पहुंचाया। शुरुआत में आपकी तबीयत का भी प्रश्न था, लेकिन आपने हिम्मत करके, बहुत ही हिम्मत करके इस कार्यक्रम को सुचारू रूप से आज पूर्णाहुति की कगार पर, आज पूर्णाहुति के स्थान पर ला करके रखा है। बीएल इंस्टीट्यूट के साथ जो हमारे एक बहुत बड़ी मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट लाइब्रेरी है, प्रिंटेड बुक्स लाइब्रेरी है, हमारे जो डायरेक्टर साहब है विजय कुमार जैन, काफी उत्साही हैं और इस प्रकार के कार्यक्रमों का संचालन और उसके लिए जिज्ञासुओं के साथ संपर्क रखना और आयोजन करना, उनके लिए भी मैं उनका आभार मानता हूं कि पूरे कार्यक्रम को अच्छी तरह उन्होंने पूरा संभाला। उसके बाद हमारे जो व्योम शाह, जो टेक्निकली इसको देखते हैं, उनको भी मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं। और हमारे जो बीएल इंस्टीट्यूट का जो स्टाफ है, उनको भी मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं। तो ये हमारा एक विद्या की यात्रा थी, यज्ञ था, उसकी आज समाप्ति हो रही है। मैं इसमें सहभागी होने वाले सभी को धन्यवाद देता हूं और विशेष रूप से हमारे ट्रस्टीगण की तरफ से और संस्थान के कर्मचारियों की ओर से और विशेष रूप से विजय जी की तरफ से मैं सबको धन्यवाद देते हुए पुनः पुनः डॉक्टर पवन जी का आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ।
मैं सभी की ओर
विजय
से आदरणीय जीतू भाई जी का भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद दे रहा हूं, क्योंकि हमारे संस्थान के स्थापना काल से लेकर के आज तक की जो यात्रा है, उसके पूरे मार्गदर्शक के साथ ही पूरा कंधे से कंधे मिला करके पूरा अपना तन मन धन से सहयोग दे रहे हैं और इतने अच्छे कार्यक्रम की उन्होंने एक संरचना की, उसको सफलता की ओर ले जा रहे हैं। और उनका अभी विचार है कि यह पूरा कार्यक्रम अमर हो जाए, इसके लिए प्रकाशित करने के लिए भी उनकी पूरी इच्छा है और मैडम की भी पूरी सहमति है। तो हम सबको यही इसी खुशखबरी के साथ यह सभा समाप्त करते हैं कि जल्दी ही
एक
आपको।
मिनट विजय जी,
हाँ,
विजय जी,
जी
विजय
जी
जी,
जी,
एक किसी ने हैंड रेज किया है, तो एक मिनट उनको हम
हाँ
संक्षेप में कुछ कहना हो तो
हाँ,
चांस देते हैं।
ठीक है।
बहुत संक्षेप में आप बताइएगा। अल्केश जवेरी, अल्केश जवेरी, आपने हैंड रेज किया है,
हाँ,
आपको कुछ कहना है तो
बस
आप
कोई
बहुत
प्रश्न नहीं।
संक्षेप में।
बहुत अच्छा कार्यक्रम रहा और हम यहाँ विदेश में यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में भी इसका आनंद ले रहे हैं, इसलिए स्पेशली हमने हाथ रेस किया आपको। और मैं इंडिया की विजिट पे आया था तो मैंने कुछ लेक्चर मिस हुए हैं, लेकिन मैंने सभी को वीडियो भी देखा और बहुत अच्छा कार्यक्रम रहा है ये। खासकर हमारे जैसे यहाँ यूएसए में ज्यादा इतने स्कूल वगैरह नहीं है, तो घर पे बैठ के हम अच्छी तरह से इसको स्टडी कर सकते हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
धन्यवाद अल्केश भाई, आपने जो हमारे इस कार्यक्रम को सराहा, इसके लिए भी मैं आपको धन्यवाद देता हूं। इन फ्यूचर हमारे कार्यक्रम में जुड़ते रहिएगा।
श्योर श्योर।
आपका जो शुभेच्छाएं हमारे साथ रहेगी और भविष्य के कार्यक्रम के लिए हमें बल प्रदान करती रहेगी।
थैंक यू वेरी मच सर।
हम लोग प्रयास करेंगे कि YouTube के माध्यम से और हमारी वेबसाइट में भी यह कार्यक्रम उपलब्ध रहें, जिससे कि हमेशा लोग इसका उपयोग कर सकेंगे। इसके लिए भी हम लोग प्रयास करेंगे और फिर से अपने इसी संकल्प को दोहराते हुए कि यथाशीघ्र इस पूरे
विजय जी, अपना जो विजय जी, एक मिनट,
हाँ जी,
अपने जो प्राकृत वर्कशॉप होने वाली है उसकी एक
जी
बार सूचना दे दें तो अच्छा रहेगा।
हाँ, बल्कि 2 सूचनाएं हैं कि प्रत्येक माह के अंतिम दिन हम लोग एक व्याख्यान माला करते हैं और इस बार अभी पिछले महीने हमने आदरणीय प्रोफेसर GC त्रिपाठी जी का पांडुलिपि संपादन के अनुभव पर व्याख्यान सुना था। सायंकाल 7 बजे से 8 बजे तक का ही समय है। इस महीने 30 अप्रैल को फिर से आदरणीय प्रोफेसर GC त्रिपाठी साहब का व्याख्यान होगा और उनका विषय होगा पांडुलिपि संपादन के मूल सिद्धांत। तो इस तरह से यह बहुत ही उपयोगी होगा। और दूसरा जो हमारा कार्यक्रम हम लोग मई या जून से प्रारंभ करने जा रहे हैं, 1 महीने का प्राकृत का हमारा समर स्कूल हम लोग करते हैं। हमारे संस्था का सबसे सफल कार्यक्रम है, 35 वर्षों से हम लोग कर रहे हैं। आज पूरे देश में जो प्राकृत के अध्यापक हम देख रहे हैं वो कहीं ना कहीं इस संस्थान से उपकृत हैं। तो 1 माह के परिश्रम से एक स्नातकोत्तर डिग्री के समान हमको लगते हैं इसका ज्ञान प्राप्त हो जाता है। तो मैं सभी अपने श्रोताओं से निवेदन करता हूं कि वो इसमें यथासंभव सम्मिलित हों और इसका भी उपयोग करें और हमारे संस्थान के सभी कार्यक्रमों से जुड़े रहें। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ में मैं मैडम के प्रति, अपने जीतू भाई के प्रति, अपने ट्रस्टियों के प्रति और सभी श्रोताओं के प्रति पुनः पुनः धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करते हुए विराम लेता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू।
धन्यवाद विजय जी आपको और डॉक्टर पवन कुमार जी को, पवन जी को मैं बहुत
धन्यवाद है।
अरे
हमने मैडम से वचन लिया है कि वो जल्दी ही हमको पिछले साल वाला वॉल्यूम तैयार करके देंगे, जिससे कि हम लोग इसको प्रकाशित करेंगे और इस वर्ष का भी करेंगे।
आज भी कई जिज्ञासु के नोट्स आई है कि आप इसको जल्दी ही सभी व्याख्यान को एक वॉल्यूम के रूप में प्रकाशित करें, तो ये सभी को बहुत ही उपयोगी रहेगा।
जी बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। Dr. Rajesh has raised his hand.
डॉक्टर राजेश जी, आपने हैंड रेज किया है, तो आपको कुछ कहना हो तो संक्षेप में आप बताइए।
जी जी सर, नमस्कार। नमस्कार मैडम।
डॉक्टर राजेश,
माई सेल्फ डॉक्टर राजेश फ्रॉम चंडीगढ़ सर। Sir, I would like to thank all the members and team of BLII and Pawan Jain ma'am for enriching our knowledge in this regard. And I would request to BLII to again send us the emails whenever the such programs are there in the future. So please preserve or take care of our emails also in the future, sir. Also. कोई भी सर ऐसा
sure, we will send you all the detail of our program to you, and we are very much thank you कि आपने इस कार्यक्रम को देखा, आप जुड़े और आपने कमेंट्स भी दिया, इसलिए मैं आपका भी आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ।
नमस्कार। नमस्कार सर।
हमारी वेबसाइट भी थोड़ा देखते रहिए, उसके माध्यम से भी सबको कार्यक्रम मिल जाया करेंगे।
जी सर, जी सर।
BLI की वेबसाइट के माध्यम से भी मिल जाया करेंगे और जितने लोग भी रजिस्टर्ड है उनको भी हम कार्यक्रम की सूचना देते रहेंगे।
जी जी।
चलिए, इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ सबको बार बार धन्यवाद। सबका दिन रात्रि मंगलमय हो। मैडम प्रणाम।
ओके, धन्यवाद, प्रणाम, नमस्कार।
नमस्कार। नमस्कार।